While I am absolutely wide open to James Gladstone, Tony Baselli, and Liam Cohen doing whatever they want to do in the draft, whatever. I don't want them to take a tight end. I'll tell you why in this edition of Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You got that right. It is your team every day here on Locked On Jaguars. We thank you for making us your first listen. I'm Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast. You can find us wherever you get your podcast, man. Make sure you tap in each and every day so you don't miss an episode, whether you watch or listen. We will be there. All right. In today's show, an episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's right, FanDuel, man. It's all about the NBA right now. Of course, the championship game in college happened yesterday. Shout out to those that like the team that won it. A lot of y'all are Jaguar fans. We appreciate you being here today. I'm going to tell you where we're going with this Jaguars podcast. Who do they love? That's what we'll talk about in segment 3. Hell, I don't know who they love. Most people don't know who they love, but I really don't know who they love, right? But what if Walter Nolan is close to Mason Graham? What if somebody over there stands on the table and they actually like Walter Nolan a little bit better since everybody's hung up on them taking little 3 technique at defensive tackle? All of those things we're going to talk about. And the Jaguars cannot draft a tight end in the first round. That's where we're going to start. I absolutely mean that 100%. I do not want them taking a tight end, man. I do not want the Jaguars selecting a tight end with this draft in the first round, especially in the first round. Just don't want it. By all means, please, just don't do it. Don't draft the tight end in this draft in the first round. The reason why I feel that way, man, is because, look, they got Brenton Strange, right? Brenton Strange is supposedly a pretty good player. They got Brenton Strange. They added, let me get the names right. They added Johnny Munt and Hunter Long in free agency. They still have Patrick Murtaugh. I don't want to see them drafting no tight end, man. Everybody keeps talking about Colton Loveland and what if they end up with Tyler Warren? That's not what I want. I've been clamoring for the Jaguars to get a well-rounded tight end and not be sitting here on this move tight end foolishness for a minute now. Everybody knows that, but that does not mean that that's where I want them to go this year, right? If you want to touch it later on in the draft, like if you look up in the 3rd round and Arroyo from Miami's there, or a kid from Oregon is there that I've talked about in the past, then good. But in that first round, I ain't trying to have them trade back for no Colston Loveland. I ain't trying to have them trade back for no Tyler Warren. Now, obviously, if they did it, we'd have to do podcasts about it, and I put the positive spin on it that I could. But I would actually be a little bit disappointed. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because I wouldn't be disappointed if it did anything else, with the exception of quarterback, obviously. I wouldn't be mad at him for doing anything else. In segment 2, I'm going to tell you why I kind of feel about Mason Graham the way, one of the veteran Jaguars feel about Mason Graham. But we'll get to that. But they just can't take a tight end. I keep seeing mock drafts. What if they end up with Tyler Warren? Yeah. What if my uncle ended up being my little brother? We can do that all day, right? Got to make sure I stay PC here. We won't get the crowd after us, but you get my point, right? If was a 5th, we'd all be drunk. And the thing is, I know we have to go over everything, but boy, you want to talk about losing people. If they took a tight end, if they moved back and took a tight end, I'm going to tell you right now, man, these fans might sit here and reconsider everything that they've thought about in the last 3 or 4 months when the Jaguars have made their changes. I know I'm being facetious here, but it is what it is. I'm going to tell you something, though. Dave Waddell, former Jaguar from a couple of decades ago, was on radio here recently. He said he wouldn't take Mason Graham. He says, I ain't worried about no player. I wouldn't take a chance at number 5 with a dude like that. Now, when he says a dude like that, let me explain what it is. it amazes me that people can pick and choose the things that they are alarmed about, right? I remember Jalen Carter weighed in at the combine at like 303. And then a couple of weeks later, a few weeks later, he was at his Georgia workout. They say he got tired during the workout and he weighed in and he was like 313. And folks actually use all of this stuff as a reason to sit here and talk about this dude like, I wouldn't take him in the first round. Well, Jalen Carter is one of the 3 best defensive tackles in the NFL, and he's a world champion now, right? And he's actually playing out of position. But he's so good that he can play nose tackle with the way that they play it. They kind of shade him a little bit. It's kind of like a one technique. He still can rush the passer, but he's really, really totally disruptive. And those pounds, they were frowned upon, right? Mason Graham apparently weighed 320 pounds when he was at Michigan. He comes to the combine, he's 296. And everybody looks at that like it's a good thing, right? And then they go to his private workout. He's like 310, 311, something like that. He gained some of the weight back. How come there are no red flags? How come there are no alarms? Is it because, well, he dropped weight instead of gaining it, but now he's gained it back? It would make me really, really wonder what his actual body type is. Like, I got friends all the time that joke with me and say, "Wig, outside of your shoulders, you got skinny man. I got broad shoulders, but I don't have real big extremities. So you got the frame of a skinny man." I'm like, well, I appreciate you. I know that. I know I'm kind of chubby, skinny, or whatever. But we talk about me. We talk about these football players. And the dude that said it, I could tell you something about him, but you'd have to see him for me in order to make it funny. It's got something to do with his eyes not being centered on his head. But that's a whole nother thing. We ain't gonna get into that. Here's what we're gonna talk about. I'm just a little bit alarmed. Like, when a guy's naturally big, even when he loses weight, he ain't gonna lose but so much, right? If you walk around 320 pounds and maybe you cut it down to 307, 308, I'm thinking like, okay, but to go down to 296, apparently from 320, that's kind of bothersome to me. And then, I guess a report came out where he was never 320. He was 316 the whole time. 316 to 296 kind of bothers me because it tells me, like, I don't really know what you are. What am I getting? Am I getting the 316 pound version of you, or am I getting the 296 pound version of you? So I have been, I took a closer look. I'm telling y'all, man, I'm not as sold on Mason Graham at 5 as a lot of people. It had nothing to do with Dave Waddell, but I will give Dave Waddell credit. He made me say, just say it without even talking to me. He's say it. Wig, you know you ain't feeling that dude like that at 5. A little bit, but like, I wouldn't hate the pick, but it's like, if they pick it, well, just like with anybody else, if the Jaguars make that selection, I'll be like, well, they know a whole bunch more than me. Well, they're going to know more about any of these players that they pick than I will. But there's something for me, man, that just kind of tells me that they need to pick somebody else to have an impact. And I know this. I know people are going to say, man, this is Hutch all over again. You're sitting there talking about his arm length and his weight. And I'm talking about more than that. And I'm going to get to why I'm saying all of these things. We'll do it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, today's show is brought to you and sponsored by Chewy. You probably heard of Chewy. They really do have everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy, whether you're shopping for food, treats, or even pet health care. Chewy makes it fast, easy, and affordable. With over 100,000 products from all your favorite brands, Chewy has everything your pet needs, from food, treats, to toys, beds, and grooming. And it's not just for dogs and cats. They got supplies for birds, fish, reptiles, and small pets too. Chewy also makes it easy to manage your pet's health with prescriptions, telehealth, vet visits, and even in-person vet clinics rolling out nationwide. I'm telling you, man, you see my tattoo right here on my arm. My dog Lexi, when she was here for those 13 years, I used Chewy so she could get every single thing that she absolutely needed, because they have everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. Right now, you can get and save $20 off on your first order and get free shipping by going to chewy.com or clicking the link in the description. Save $20 on your first order with free shipping by clicking the link in the description. Minimum purchase required. New customers only. Terms and conditions apply. See site for complete details. Along here, Locked On Jaguars, kind of all over the place a little bit. I started out talking about how they can't take a tight end, and I'll tell you why I got to that. A lot of my fellow content creators have done shows. I appreciate all of their hard work. I just wonder why they were so upset if the Jaguars took Ashton Jeanty. And it's like, I understand that might not be your preference, but the only position that'll piss me off like that is if they took a tight end in the first round. Taking a game-breaking running back doesn't bother me as much, especially one like Jeanty. Now, there's some people that think Omarion Hampton is a better player. Bigger, stronger, has a little bit of Ike Forte in him, probably more durable, may even have a little bit more long speed. I get it. Look, I get it, but I'm not down on them for doing that if they're going to be a team that uses two running backs all the time. I don't want them to take a tight end, and to be honest, I don't want to take a 3 technique with the top 5 pick unless they're just not married to Mason Smith. Like they probably still got a book on him for whatever evaluation they had of him before, combined with the film. They may think he's a rotational player at best. You can't. I know they exercised the 50 option on Trayvon yesterday. Shout out to the Jaguars for doing that. And inconspicuous in their absence are all of the people that sit here and thought the Jaguars were going to trade Trayvon. Like they said, well, they could still trade him. But yeah, they value him a little bit more. I think that number is about $15 million for that 5th year. They value him a little bit more than a whole bunch of y'all do. And they value him more than a whole bunch of y'all thought they do. So shout out to Trayvon for getting the 5th year option. I didn't make a big deal about it and do a whole bunch of announcements about it and make this show about it because I thought it was pretty much a foregone conclusion that the Jaguars were going to do that. And I want to act like I've been here before. I want to be, I don't want to act surprised by something I expected. I don't expect them to take a tight end. I don't expect them to use the top 5 pick on a 3 technique unless, like I said, they really don't feel the way that people hope they feel about Mason Smith, and they can't feel the way about all of Balky's players. I mean, they hooked up Trayvon. They like BTJ. Obviously, they talked about Trevor a whole bunch. They mentioned Tyson Campbell and his value to the team, and Josh Allen. And, pretty soon you could be wondering why the hell they get rid of Trent if they like everybody, right? So there has to be somebody that they don't like. Kenneth Grant is a better pick to me. I even talked to somebody yesterday around the league. I said the Jaguars need Kenneth Grant, and I did a show yesterday. Best player, well, the biggest position of need to help the team and the best player at that position possibly in the NFL, and that's why I had a thumbnail yesterday of Dexter Lawrence. If you could take any premium player from any position, not quarterback, not receiver, around the NFL to say, oh, I ain't going to give you a corner either because everybody's going to take Stingley or Sauce. But my point is like reasonable that you reasonably expect to find in the draft. Of course, it would be Travis Hunter because people would be saying he could be a corner and a wide receiver. But I think it's Dexter Lawrence. Dexter Lawrence, and I said that yesterday. I want you to hear Damien Parsons. He was on with Locked On Chargers, and he was talking about the Chargers. It started with them being interested in Kenneth Grant, where they picked, I think, 22nd or 23rd. And Damien kind of flipped this conversation into somebody, and it's somebody that I mentioned earlier, Walter Nolan. What if, just what if, the people in that building looked at the tape and said, we like Walter Nolan a whole bunch better. Now, you say, well, he's 296 pounds also. Yeah, but he's 296 pounds, and that's what he played at in college. That's what you've seen him. When he was recruited out of high school, he was 320, but he got baby fat off, and now he's an explosive athlete instead of just being a guy bigger than everybody else. I want you to hear Damien Parsons talk about Walter Nolan and listen to what he says about the position that he played and what he thinks he's best at in the NFL.
Outside of Kenneth Grant, I think you can look at Derek Harmon from Oregon, 6'4", 313. Long arms, 34 and 3/8. His 83 and 3/4 wingspan. He ran like sub 5 in the 40. So he's got a good get off. He's physical. At Oregon, he did a little bit of everything. He one gapped, he two gapped, he stopped the run, but also flashed the ability to collapse the pocket. So I think he could be there at 22. One of my favorite guys in this class. He's a little like he plays around that 295, 300-pound range, but Walter Nolan from Ole Miss, one of the most disruptive guys in this class, and Ole Miss didn't really do him a lot of justice because they're playing him out of position, playing him at 0 and 1 while they have JJ Pegues, who's 330, and he's playing defensive end. It was a very weird alignment that they were running over there, but it's a slanting defense, and they just told him to blow up the center every single chance he had to. Like he anchored well against double teams, but when you left him one-on-one and seen him at the Senior Bowl, this guy has the upside to be one of the more dangerous 3-techs. And he said at the Senior Bowl, I'm not a 0-1. I'm a 3-tech to 4-eye, and you allow him to play just that sole gap responsibility where he can just fully develop his full skill set. I think this is a guy that could absolutely be a full impact, because at the end of the day, we watched what Philadelphia did to the guy in your division, Pat Mahomes. They got to him with 4. They didn't have the pressure. They got to him with 4. What was a big component of that is having a guy like Jalen Carter.
Now, listen, he mentioned Philadelphia. I'm going to mention Baltimore, and they were talking about the Chargers. Y'all going to screw around and let a guy like that fall late into the first round, and one of those real good teams are going. Can you imagine if Philadelphia got this kid, Walter Nolan, and he put him on the line with the dudes? He'll just replace Milton Williams, and he's younger and more talented. At one point, Walter Nolan was the best high school player in the country. This is why, man, I'm sitting here saying, like, come on, dog. Y'all gotta really sell me on Mason Graham. And that weight thing scared me a little bit, because I actually did think, okay, he's a dude that you can put at the one technique, kind of like a Booger McFarland type, who could really do a lot of damage when Booger was lined up next to Warren Sapp in Tampa all those years. And then you go back and you look at it, well, he might not be that type of player. JJ Pegues is. He mentioned JJ Pegues because Pegues played out of position 2 at Ole Miss, but Pegues is one of my 12 players that I had that are better than. So this kind of reminds us to remember that the draft does not end after the first round, and just because the Jaguars don't necessarily go after a nose tackle doesn't mean that they won't go after one. And just because they go after, if they do get Mason Graham at 3 technique or whoever they decide to take, it doesn't mean that precludes them from double dipping and getting another dude to play right next to him. They got Jordan Jefferson, a 4th-round pick from last year. Don't know how they feel about him other than the fact that he was here a year ago. But I mentioned some of the alternatives. Jamari Caldwell was one of the dudes I keep talking about that could be a player that they target maybe in day 2, at the end of day 2, and probably in the 3rd round. So they could actually still do it. I just had to be transparent with y'all. I don't want no quarterback. I'm sorry. I don't want no tight end in the 1st round. I don't even want a tight end in the 2nd round, to be honest with you. And I'm getting real close to saying I'd rather have somebody else than Mason Graham. I want to thank my boy Dave Waddell for giving me the courage to finally say it. If they pick him, I told you I'm going to come back and we're going to do positive podcasts, and we're going to look at it from the other side and see how that goes. Trying to figure out who they love at this point. Who do you love, man? Like, who? It's hard. It's hard because I don't have any history of their tendencies, and that's the thing. I don't know what their tendency is going to be. We kind of all knew where Trent was with it, and we kind of knew where Dave Caldwell was with it before that. But the tendencies of these teams and the GMs and the people they have in place, it's all new staff. They all have the job for the first time. I don't know what they're going to do. I'm going to talk about the philosophy and why it's so hard for us to talk about who they actually love. We'll do that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, today's show is sponsored and brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, you can join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet and you'll get $250 in bonus bets if you win. I love how FanDuel makes it betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props, from three-pointers to steals to assists. FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. It's all about the NBA on FanDuel. All right, rocking and rolling here along on the third and final segment here on Locked On Jaguars. Going down to the facility tomorrow. So we'll probably run our show a little bit in the afternoon because I'm going to see what Liam Cohen and Foy Olubakan are going to be talking about tomorrow on the first day that players report. I think that's actually today. But they're going to meet with the media tomorrow and in the conference room down at the Miller Electric Training Center, and I'll be right there. So look for an afternoon pod, probably around 3 o'clock tomorrow, because I'll wait to see what Liam and Foy have to say about getting started. And this process of building this thing up is right now. It gives the team a chance to look at some veterans. It's the involuntary part of it. But it gives them to look at, get their eyes on some guys and see who they have and what they have as they get ready for the draft. Who do they love? It's hard for me to tell who they love because I don't know enough about their tendencies. My man, Matt Williamson, who comes on with me, former NFL scout, he started Locked On NFL. He now does the Peacock and Williamson podcast. Comes on every Friday on Locked On NFL with me in the barbershop. But he talked about draft philosophy, and this is the way I usually go about it. I look at their tendencies, their past, their philosophy. I do it league-wide. And the more you get the turnover, especially when it's coach and GM, and you don't have a big track record of what these teams have done traditionally, the harder it is for you to figure it out. Listen to Matty when he explains his philosophy, which I agree with wholeheartedly.
Anyone is interested with Draft Digest, they put out an old school draft magazine every year. And you won't find my name in there, but that's okay. I do all the team needs. And like when you go to the team pages in that publication, I pretty much wrote all that, they picked up a wide receiver, but they need a tight end, blah, blah, blah. And one of the things is Miami Dolphins, draft Diddy. And it's just, what's some kind of trend about this team? And basically what I do is I go to drafthistory.com, pull up that team, and just kind of stare at it until something jumps out at me, and sometimes you got to strain a little bit. Sometimes they're jump off the page. They're really impressive stuff, and they tell you a lot about where the team is right now.
Absolutely. Sometimes it's just plain as day what a team's philosophy is, and you can learn a lot about what potentially could happen in this draft. And
I like what they both said, and they are exactly right. And I'm going to take their advice because drafthistory.com is one of the sites that I have used for years. And all it does is it gives you a chance to break the draft down by year, position, round, college, team, pick and round, or player in the draft. Like you could go, whatever player in the draft, the first, second, third, and they'll tell you year after year. Looking at the Jaguars, man, in the first round, I'm not going to complain. We're going to see what the book is on Anton Harrison. I'll let you know right away as soon as we figured out what they think about him. But you go back to 2021, they got Trevor and Travis Etienne. Both are still big-time players for this team. They had 2 first-round picks. The next year, they had 2 more. They had Trayvon Walker, who's a good player, a very, very good player. Devin Lloyd, who still has to find his footing, but we'll see if he does this year. No fifth-year option noise about him. Those are the first 2 picks in that draft, but both those guys are just like in the first year I mentioned, 2021. Those dudes are big-time players for this team. Then you get to Anton Harrison and Brenton Strange. Brenton Strange is one of the reasons I don't think they need to draft the tight end in the first two days of the draft. I'll include Tank Bigsby and Ventrell Miller because they're both playing a whole bunch in that draft. And there was some stuff there. Parker Washington in 2023 was there. Last year was the home run, though. It was Brian Thomas Jr. That dude is the top 10 player at his position after only 1 season. And then you have Jarian Jones, who's going to play a whole bunch in the secondary for the Jags. But right between them, you have Mason Smith. And that's why I have no idea how these people feel about Mason Smith. They also have Jordan Jefferson, DeAndre Prince, a couple of other guys that they got. They got their kicker in the draft, Cam Little, who looks like a really, really good kicker. And then one of their edge depth guys, Miles Cole. So from a name perspective, they got a whole bunch of people. That doesn't mean dilly squat, though. What have you done for me lately? What are they going to do for this team now? If the Jaguars take Mason Graham, that is going to alter the career of Mason Smith. It just is. It naturally is. Doesn't mean that there won't be competition. Doesn't mean that there's a chance that 60% of the snaps you could play both of them together because they both can pass rush, but you have to get to that point first. There's so many people that want to move Trayvon inside on those downs and get another edge rush on the outside to go with Josh, that they don't understand that if that happens, then, I mean, where is both Mason and Mason going to play? Mason Graham and Mason Smith. That's why I'm saying at that position, I don't mind them touching that position. Top 5, the dude better be really, really, really freaking special for you to go out and do it. So I don't know who they love. I really have no clue, no idea. I saw a mock draft where they moved down. They went back to late in the top 10 and got Ted McMillan to go along with Brian Thomas Jr. I'm cool for it if they move down and get an extra second-round pick to do that and be able to take more bites at the apple on day 2. I'm all for it, or even if that helps them have the ammunition that they need to move up, back up into the first round and maybe get that defensive tackle like Nolan or Harmon that might fall, that allows them to at least get a real good player. Even though you have guys at his position already, you can still get a really, really good player while getting something else, right? Getting something else and still getting the production. Reminder, the draft process is the process, but if you go year after year, and I'm glad I brought up draft history, go back and look. There are dudes that just didn't make it every single year, man. We get so caught up in this process that this process is what it is, and then the actual games are what they are, and then the time you need to see if the picks are going to develop, that's a whole nother thing. But the thing that we don't ever do is attach the fact that we are so into the draft process in a vacuum that we actually look like we forget that these dudes are actually going to be on the field. And if somebody has a different opinion than you, it's okay, because they actually might be right and you could be wrong. It's just that the draft process in and of itself has this life that it takes on of its own, and people don't really do the translation. Even if it's 2 years from now, it's like, okay, what actually happens during the game? Maybe it'll keep everybody from getting mad at themselves. They realize just how wrong they are when it comes to the players that we all like. To make sure that you get a good opinion of those players, make sure you go to Locked On NFL Draft with Damien Parsons and Coach Keith Sanchez. Both guys are really, really good at what they do, and they do it together here, man. You'll find out about dudes that you ain't even heard of, and they'll give you the goods and what those guys are expected to translate to in the National Football League. Make sure you check that out wherever you get your podcast. That's Locked On NFL Draft, and I'll be on Locked On NFL each and every day in the barbershop, along with here on Locked On Jaguars. Thank y'all for spending these 28 minutes with me. We appreciate it. We'll see you next time.